The House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll, and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to the House chaplain and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Representative Newland.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we stand before you today grateful for the blessings that you bestow upon us daily. Today we have many plans, various agendas, a list of expectations, numerous intentions, and busy schedules. Our day already seems driven by demands on our time, goals to accomplish, and deadlines to meet. It can be so easy for each one to get so involved with the busyness of the day that we neglect to remember that you establish our steps. Help us to commit to you all that we hope to accomplish today, and ask that you would allow all our plans to prosper. This I pray in your gracious name. Amen.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members will refrain from being in the center aisle when someone is in the chair. Has every member had an opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. Changes of reference. Senate Bill 417 is withdrawn from the Committee on Agriculture and referred to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications. House Bill 2710 appears on the consent calendar for the first day. Is there objection? Seeing none, it will remain on the consent calendar for the second day. The Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Hawkins for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Speaker appoints Representative Francis to chair the Committee of the Whole.
Good morning, everybody. First item of business today is SB 358. For the purpose of carrying SB 358, the chair recognizes Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 358 you already heard about because it was in a House bill, and this one came from the Senate identical bill. They're amending the Public Water Supply Program's definition of project to remove the definition's exclusion of projects that are related to the diversion or transportation of water acquired through a water transfer, and that will keep any city who's trying to do a transfer of water, which is always over 35 miles, from using the state revolving water fund, which is a low interest rate for cities of 1.3%. This has been an unfair sentence in this, and I think that it needs to be changed, and I would appreciate your vote. I'll stand for questions.
Does any member wish to desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of the bill did a great job describing its contents, and I urge your support. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? If there is no further discussion, Representative Wassinger, you may close.
Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports SB 358 favorable for passage.
You have heard the motion of Representative Wassinger to report SB 358 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next item of business is SB 101. For the purposes of carrying SB 101, the chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were no committee amendments. I rise before the body to present House substitute for Senate Bill 101, which would amend the
I'm sorry, Representative, there was committee amendments.
Mr. Chair, there were committee amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. I rise before the body to present House substitute for Senate Bill 101, which would amend the definition of and establish regulations and approve uses for electric-assisted bicycles. This bill would amend the definition of an electric-assisted bicycle by removing the current specifications of the motor, no more than 1,000 watts, 20 miles per hour, and specify an electric motor of less than 750 watts. The bill would further define 3 classes of e-bikes. A Class 1 e-bike provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling and stops assisting at 20 miles per hour. A Class 2 e-bike can provide assistance without pedaling, but also stops assisting at 20 miles per hour. And a Class 3 e-bike provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling and stops assisting at 28 miles per hour. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Class 3 e-bikes would also be required to have a speedometer. This bill would also require that electric bikes be marked with the number, the class number, the top assisted speed, and the motor wattage. If an individual were to modify a bike, they would have to modify that label to indicate the new specifications. This bill would exclude e-bikes in all 3 of these classes from being registered as motor vehicles, being subject to vehicle dealer and manufacturer regulations, and also vehicle insurance requirements. In all other statutes, e-bikes would be treated under this bill the same as we currently treat unassisted bikes. An operator of an e-bike under this bill would have to be 16 years or older, but people under 16 could ride as a passenger on an e-bike. This bill does not restrict a city through adopting an ordinance from governing the operation of bikes on their streets, highways, paths, trails, or sidewalks under their jurisdiction. The organization People for Bikes spoke as a proponent to this bill and told us in committee that 36 other states have adopted similar statutes. This bill was initially opposed by Kansas League of Municipalities, but after the inclusion of these provisions that cities could regulate the use of bikes in their municipality, they are now neutral. And thank you, Mr. Chair. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Helgerson.
With the changes that were made, the league was in support of it, was neutral, and so I'm also in support of the bill.
The chair recognizes Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the bill carrier. The bill seems to define clearly that there are 3 classes, as you had said, but then on section F, it mentions that there's only 2 ways that the engine can be disengaged, either by stopping pedaling or by putting the brake on. But my understanding is that there's a 3rd way, and that's taking your hand off of the lever on a Class 2 bicycle. Is that correct?
So the bill is silent on the mechanism by which you would turn off assistance for a Class 2 bike, but it does specify that it doesn't require that you're pedaling while you're operating the bike. And I acknowledge that section F doesn't make it clear that that excludes Class 2 bikes.
Okay, and then one other question, and that because I would agree, I think section F is kind of needless to define anything additional. The other one is that I noticed that only the Class 3 bicycles need a speedometer, and what was that? Why were they picked out of the 3?
Yep. Because the max speed on a Class 3 electric assisted bicycle is 28 miles per hour, the drafters of the bill felt that adding a speedometer would allay some of the concerns, because we did have one opponent in committee that just felt in the committee hearing that just felt these bikes are too fast. And so that was to somewhat alleviate the concern so that the operator could see how fast they were going.
Okay, but it wouldn't slow the bike or disable the bike. It's just an informational.
No, as with the, as the Class 3 definition applies, at 28 miles an hour, the motor stops assisting. But with any of these bikes, if you're going downhill, you could probably get higher than the assisted speed.
Well, thank you for those. But with that, I would have an amendment for those.
The amendment appears short. Would you like to read the amendment? Or the clerk will read.
Page 9, striking all in lines 19 through 21, and line 22 by striking G and inserting F. On page 10 by striking all in lines 2 through 4, redesignating subsections, paragraphs, subparagraphs, and clauses accordingly.
Representative, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes. Thank you, body, for your time, but I was interested that this bill came. We've rented electric bikes a couple of times, and there's a throttle switch on the thumb that you can put the brake on and you can stop pedaling, but as long as you have your thumb. So I think F was confusing. So the proposed amendment basically just strikes out section F, which seems to conflict with the already clear definitions of a Class 1, 2, and 3. And then the second part of the amendment strikes out the language requiring a speedometer for Class 3 bicycles, because I don't know why we pick that somebody may want to know how fast they're going. That's purely subjective, and it's no more than if someone wants to know that information, they can go out and buy a speedometer, but I don't know that we need to require that through the regulation. So with that, I close.
No, we'll go ahead and let others speak to the amendment. Would anybody like to speak to the amendment? Chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I discussed this amendment with the previous representative, the bringer of the amendment, and I consider this a friendly amendment. I think it clarifies the language in a beneficial way, just so there's no ambiguity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment? If there is no further discussion, Representative Turner, you may close.
I close.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Representative Helgerson. Representative Helgerson, Chair recognizes Representative Helgerson.
Was that intentional?
I promise it wasn't.
If the carrier of the amendment could stand for a question. What we're trying to do is have this similar to other states. Does this take us out of conformity with the other 38 states that have legislation already passed?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Well, I was visited by a couple of folks that are encouraging this legislation, and they didn't have answers to my questions about these two particular passages. So I don't think these passages add anything to the legislation. They don't weaken it. Actually, they make it stronger, I think, in terms of eliminating the conflict that exists between the definition of the Class 3 and what's in Section F. So I would argue that this is not a big enough wrench to throw anything off kilter, no.
Okay. It sounds like the bill will go to conference. So I hope that we'll have a chance to look at any of the changes then. The concern I have is whether or not it cuts out of conformity with the other states. So thank you.
All right, let's try this one more time. Representative Turner, would you like to close?
Yes, absolutely. In response to the previous representative's question, this is a fairly minor and technical change that I would have actually thought could have been brought by the committee itself. So I don't see that this throws us out of line with what other states would be passing. So with that, I close.
All right, body, let's try to keep the noise down. It's getting pretty loud out here. And let's pay attention to the business that we've got before us today. So with that, you've heard the motion by Representative Turner to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. We're back on the bill. Would anybody else like to speak to the bill? If there is no further discussion, Representative Proctor, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill creates some statute for e-bikes. Right now, there is no statute for e-bikes. If we don't pass this bill, every municipality is going to do something different. This just creates standardization across the state as to electric-assisted bicycles. So with that, Mr. Chair, I move that when the body rises and reports, it reports House substitute for Senate Bill 101 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. The next item of business today is SB 62. For purposes of carrying SB 62, the chair recognizes Representative Estes.
Mr. Chair, there were committee amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
It's a pleasure to bring.
Motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to bring Senate Bill 62 in front of you. This is a bill that helps to establish a commission that oversees children's vision and health screening. 40% of the brain is devoted to visual function, and 80% of learning is a result of visual processing. So when you think about that, it's pretty stunning, and it makes the case right there that it's important that we monitor and do a good job of screening vision for children. In 2017, Envision spearheaded a group of folks from the vision community to get together and address our vision standards as a state. And it's important that they did this because they discovered three things. Our vision screening guidelines were in need of updating and being applied evenly across the board. They found that they needed to set standards for what were the best ages to screen children. The second thing they found was that we needed evidence-based practices to make sure that the screenings that we are using are good. And for me, that's a personal story because I managed to pass every vision screening that I had as a child. And it wasn't until 8th grade when I stepped out in front of a car that I didn't see because nobody realized I was legally blind without glasses, that it could have been a horrible event. And it's important that we have quality screening. The other thing that they found was, as a body of the governments that work together for children, we weren't doing a good job of keeping track of our standards. The original screening laws and regulations were established by the legislature in 1959, and we had never made a change until 2001. And it had gotten to 2017, and we still hadn't updated to modern advances. So I'm here today to ask you to support establishing this commission. And one thing that really touched my heart about this bill is the groups that are asking for this bill believed in it so much, they said, we don't even want a per diem. Therefore, the fiscal note for this bill is zero. These screenings are already done by the school districts. So this commission would include an optometrist, an ophthalmologist, a representative from a health organization that's dedicated to preventing blindness, a representative from the Department of Education, a representative from Department of Health and Environment, a school nurse, one public health nurse, one school administrator. And with that, I stand for, let me go ahead and proactively answer two questions that I received. One was, what's the parent role in this? It doesn't change the current existing status quo that parents get to opt out of this. The other question that I received was, are they doing retinal scans and are they stored? And the answer is they do not do them, and therefore there is nothing to store. And I'll be happy to take questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the representative for giving an excellent summary of this bill. It's an important bill. The earlier we can detect vision problems among our youngest children as they go to school, the better chances they're going to have of being successful in school. So I would encourage you to support this, and it benefits our children, and it's something we should all be supporting. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Riley.
Mr. Chair, my understanding is that this bill would create the Kansas Children's Vision, Health, and School Readiness Commission. Part of that readiness is being able to checking children's vision and their ability to look at letters and diagnose letters. And so because of that, I have an amendment.
The amendment is short. The clerk will read.
Page 3, line 41 by striking and line 42 after administrator by inserting and. 9, one reading specialist trained in the screening, knowledge, characteristics, and science of dyslexia and reading.
Representative, would you like to explain your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've been hearing about this for the last 15 years. All I'm asking in this amendment is adding one more person to this commission that has knowledge, skills, so that they can have input onto this commission based on something that's been a big thing for the last 15 to 20 years, and that's children being able to, they really need their vision be checked from 4 years on to be analyzed whether they're going to have some reading problems when they get into school. So again, this doesn't change the years of how often people get vision. It just puts somebody on that board that has knowledge about dyslexia. Dyslexia, we're finding, and I mean, this challenge has been going on for years, but as kids are getting in and starting to read, they're finding certain kids have reading problems. Those kids that have reading problems, then they are probably put in, developed an IEP, and that IEP, they will determine whether or not they have a reading problem. Of those kids that have a reading and a learning disability, about 80% of those kids they've found that they have one of the 4 problems with dyslexia. So they know more and more about dyslexia. It's causing problems that needs to be identified, and we're not changing when, but we're just putting somebody on that board that can give the doctors and this committee, this commission input to something that we know is a challenge. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? Chair recognizes Representative Hubert.
I appreciate the intent of the amendment. I am going to ask you to not support it at this time. We've done a lot of work on dyslexia, and there's a task force that just had its third yearly meeting, and they're going to be presenting to my committee, not next week, but the week after that, I think. And this topic is something I think would be pertinent to the dyslexia task force. And so I don't know if we need to do what this amendment is doing and put it in a statute. I think some of this could be looked at and accomplished through working with the Department of Education and this task force. And so I do support the underlying bill and appreciate the need for good vision screening.
Chair recognizes Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would look favorably upon this amendment. We're trying to get a clean vision screening bill to keep this organized. Keep in mind, the eyes receive information the brain sees, and dyslexia is a neurological disorder. We want to rapidly and efficiently screen children, and you really need reading teachers and others with sophisticated training to do dyslexia training. So as you heard from the previous representative, there are other forums to consider this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our son is dyslexic, and when he was diagnosed and about 7 or 8 years old, my wife couldn't find proper instruction in our school district, so she went to the Shriners Hospital, the Children's Hospital in Dallas, where they taught her how to educate our son on how to read. He's now in his mid-30s, a successful engineer and doing quite well. Dyslexia is a learning disability. It is not a vision problem. That's been disputed by various professional organizations, but it is a learning disability not a vision problem, so I would ask you not to support this amendment. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Estes.
Just like to say that I consider this an unfriendly amendment because of the difference between a diagnosis and a screening. And as a former classroom teacher who did teach third grade, I always caught on that there might be a dyslexic problem based on what was going on when that child was reading and working on their schoolwork. You're immediately clued into the pattern of mistakes that they make. And that's what you look for to help you identify dyslexia early, which is incredibly important. So, and the doctors, my phone has rung off the hook this morning from various eye doctors saying that they really prefer that this is a clean bill. So in appreciation of those who helped to bring this issue forward, I respectfully ask that despite the good intentions of the amendment, that we vote it down.
Chair recognizes Representative Epley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Body, I rise to speak against this amendment only because brain plasticity is a completely different area than vision screening, and this is a bill that we need to keep clean and get done. The screening for dyslexia is done by special people who are experts in reading and not necessarily vision experts. I mean, while the two are very related to the eyes, it really ends there because it really is a brain issue as discussed by other people today. So again, I rise to speak against this amendment. I think it's very well intentioned, and I appreciate the maker of the amendment, but I think the Dyslexia Task Force may have an opportunity to take this up and deal with it. So I'd like to keep this vision screening bill clean and go forward with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment? If not, Representative Riley, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate what the doctors are saying, and from a school point of view, education point of view, I think that we need to have somebody on that board that is advising these boards on what's going on with dyslexia and how that does relate to vision. And so with that, I move my motion. I move my amendment.
Heard the motion by Representative Riley to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. No. Division's been called. Clerk will open the roll. Has every member had an opportunity to vote? The clerk will close the roll and take the tally. Uh, 15 having voted in favor and 99 against. The motion fails. We're back on the bill. The chair recognizes Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As an experienced educator who's seen the results of some of these vision screening tests, I'd like to explain. This is not just deciding if a child needs glasses. This goes much deeper than that. There are different kinds of vision ailments that are not easily perceptible, but can be figured out by optometrists and can make a tremendous difference in their learning. We did a project in one of my schools in which we had our kids screened. Then they were receiving help, and it's not surgery, but there are some helpful things that can strengthen their vision to help their reading, and we tracked their performance. and there was a definite change for the better in their performance. So this is something that is really needed. These conditions that are found are oftentimes correctable, and I would urge you to vote for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion? If there is no further discussion, Representative Estes, you may close.
I'd like to thank the body for their attention to this important matter. Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports Senate Bill 62 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Estes to report SB 62 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. Body, this concludes our general orders. The chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we rise and report.
Heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole recommends Senate Bill 358 be passed. House substitute for Senate Bill 101 and Senate Bill 62 be passed as amended.
Speaker recognizes Representative Francis for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Committee of the Whole report.
You've heard the motion to adopt the committee report. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Speaker recognizes Representative Hawkins for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 2311, I move that emergency be declared and that Senate Bill 358, House substitute for Senate Bill 101, and Senate Bill 62 be advanced to that order of business final action on bills and concurrent resolutions.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion passes. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 358 by the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, an act concerning water relating to the financing of public water supply projects, allowing financing for projects that are related to the diversion or transportation of water acquired through a water transfer.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 358. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Not seeing anyone. Representative Reichman votes aye. Representative Wassinger, how do you vote? Aye. Seeing no further changes of vote, 121 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of Senate Bill 358, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
House substitute for Senate Bill 101 by the Committee on Transportation, an act concerning electric-assisted bicycles relating to the regulation and approved use thereof, providing for use of certain sizes of motors.
This constitutes final action on House substitute for Senate Bill 101. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Bergquist votes no. Any further changes of vote? Representative Hauser votes no. Any further changes of vote? Seeing none, 86 having voted in favor and 35 against the passage of House Substitute for Senate Bill 101, same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. Clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill number 62 by the Committee on Education, an act concerning schools relating to student vision screenings and standards, therefore, establishing the Kansas Children's Vision, Health, and School Readiness Commission.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 62. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 115 having voted in favor and 6 against the passage of Senate Bill 62, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends House Bill 2677 be passed. Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends House Bill 2462 be passed. Committee on Water recommends House Bill 2686 be amended by substituting a new bill to be designated as substitute for House Bill number 2686 as follows. An act concerning water relating to sales and compensating use tax requiring groundwater management districts to provide certain reports to the legislature, distributing a portion of the revenue from the sales and compensating use tax to the State Water Plan Fund, and the substitute bill be passed.
Is there objection to returning to that order of business, introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions? Seeing none, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2723 by the Committee on Appropriations, an act concerning animals relating to transporting animals into the state, authorizing the Animal Health Commissioner to assess a civil penalty for violations relating thereto. House Bill number 2724 by the Committee on Taxation, an act concerning property taxation relating to tax levy rate, excluding the required 20 mills for school districts from the notice and public hearing requirements to exceed the revenue neutral rate for property tax purposes.
Changes of reference. Senate Bill 377 is withdrawn from the Committee on Financial Institutions and Rural Development and referred to the Committee on Insurance and Pensions. Are there announcements? Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Higher Ed budget, we are meeting today at 1:30, our regular room. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Just a reminder, there is legislative post audit at 546 South at noon.
Representative Garber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Congressional Prayer Caucus meets in 218 North immediately following adjournment.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you. Just a reminder that today is the Music Advocacy Day at the Capitol, and this morning we were treated with breakfast from the Kansas Music Education Association, and this afternoon over the lunch hour we will have music in the rotunda, so I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you.
Representative Anderson.
South Central delegation, we will have lunch in 152 South and a presentation. Stop by.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, there will be a legislative prayer breakfast tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. in 142 South. Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Thursday, March 3rd at 11 a.m. pro forma.
Heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The House is adjourned.